Okay. This is my just showing you my preview of my update brand fusion deck with some maxis I got off of opening some secret packs of slims. Mostly since I have every single UR in a deck excluding Pyro, I said I might as well, and I managed to get a huge amount of value wise off of it to actually craft out my maxis finally. It's just a minor update to my branded budget deck. Maxis I wasn't running before, but I decided to this point to mostly get some value off of all the new link plays that I'm facing against nowadays, being Marius, among others, and maybe potential others. Other words, there's only like one other slim card I'm mostly. Oh wait, Salamangreat. Nope. Besides that, there's not much URs essentially I don't need. If I would have gotten a new Andres, I essentially would have destructed my Royal Finish one. I would not give a F about since it's not generic enough me to justify. Overall, here's my news decks. I also took out some stuff. Here's what I mostly took out before. Previously, I'm just going over some changes. The only stuff I changed off my link format version of the deck is that I took out Mole since I don't feel like it's needed anymore. You could go with Mole still nowadays but I'm mostly based on mostly this testing I'm doing on. I lowered Buffalo mostly since I'd be running 15 Cyberse cards. So when it felt it'd be since I would not have enough targets essentially to make it work off. I still cut Foxy's mostly so I can special summon out Gazelle, same thing, but I took out one Spinny mostly so I can actually, since I mostly make room some other stuff I was running in my deck. Not running Coyote anymore. Coyote I would have kept maybe. Mostly so I can link into stuff and actually get my combo pieces back. I still kept Ladybug, but I took out Foul. Mostly since I don't need to send cards to my hand at this point, I feel like you could still use it. But I just didn't feel like it's worth it now. Especially since the mostly deck is mostly different for the first format. The only stuff I took out mostly being were one-time passcode, Lightning Storm, one Imperm, one more Rage. Outside that, my extra deck changed. But mostly everything is still what you get from the structure deck, essentially, mind. The only essentially meaning I had Max C's at this point. I added Kaijus, mostly, so I was dealing with Machina and Timelords, and I needed an out, and I decided this was my closest thing to an out I can get at least. Without Imper in my hand. And also, like I said, my link plays. To go into my default stuff, being Access Code, Code Splash Mage, and that's about it. But also, I can also get move annoying monsters, being the case of a good handful of cards. I decided to add Falco mostly so I can get my six Lemons cards back to my hand, essentially the set. But also realize Gazelle's skill, or pretty much go into Spinny essentially, so I can get free plus off it. Jack's Dragar mostly link into my slim stuff to mostly get my extended plays out. But in addition to those monsters, I essentially have 4 ideal targets to mostly use my Silent Mining nowadays. I add Santrays since I can actually make use of it. I will be updating my link format deck later on, after some testing by some other people, being one person in particular. I added Called by the Grave, which I didn't have before because I didn't feel like it. And I was mostly running more on the link format deck that wasn't even trying to go into progress into the next one. I added Cross-Eyed Designator this time, mostly so I can not deal with Machina or Ash or Imperm or Droplet of all things, which wouldn't have happened beforehand. drop it nowadays. I mostly just utilize it to first cards that designator nowadays, or just so I can actually get it off if I feel like it, to mostly combo up my other cards. I can mostly everything else the same. Most of my Link deck is mostly the same stuff I was running previously, as you pretty much will notice. The only exception being is that I'm not running one more copy of Heat Leo. I'm essentially running Mergers mostly for its skill, mostly so I can go back to my links and reutilize it and target one monster return deck to hand for most of my out. And I had to re-look at 2 matches I had to mostly see if it was worth it, if I actually had it out at all, which I'll be going along with you guys. Number 41, but mind you, I only have like, I think only 1, 2, 3. Okay, so basically I actually ended up having 6 targets, okay. Mostly so I can stall while also doing stuff. I have Palex, mostly so I can end Sentry right now instead of just utilizing it for form mitigation, which I'm mostly still doing. One Almage, mostly that, but I might just take it out maybe for something else. I don't know yet, since I only have about, attack-wise, I only have 3, 6, 8, 10. 10 targets, and mostly just attack enough just to utilize it nowadays. So I don't know yet. Nightmare Phoenix, mostly for removal, or just to proc out Doscraper if I had it in my hand still, or draw into it. If I utilize Buffalo skill. And I can just send out for Falco if I feel like it. Or Jack Jagger, mostly, but I'm mostly using for removal. I'll take Generate perform it out against cards if I feel like it. When Summer's monster attacks, negate all other effects, but mostly, you mostly be utilizing it for everything else. Just to go into access code. Sunlight Wolf. Obvious reasons why. Splash Base still keeping trust code. Everything else is the same. Also, here comes the replays. Okay, here comes my first match. It will be against Destiny Heroes, which I am surprised I managed to beat at this point. Mostly, they're mostly standard Vision Hero Engine, Maxis, and Ash. And Elmatir Strat does mostly to add cards, but also analyze other hero cards being Shadow Mist or Liquid Soldier, mostly to add Miracle to your hand. But mostly to actually get everything else they need to proc off. Essentially, it's a superior hero deck. I'll be honest, this is my 3rd time recording. I only just realized some stuff or looking at stuff. The first match is maybe with my Brennan deck. I'm mostly just looking at standard plays with Vision Heroes, just standard opening. Sadly, I did not have everything I need for the deck on hand. Personally, I would have kept the Machina hand. Next up, I'll be honest, utilizing that combo with Malicious is pretty good since it works out combo-wise. Sadly, I didn't have Ash for anything in my hand. Next up, I was surprised about utilizing Dark Calling. Bane was the one existence I couldn't make. That I couldn't deal with if I had my life was on it. My first combo was essentially with sending my blue eyes, mostly so I can probably bait out Ash. Next up, Melody, so I can go into that, but I mostly utilize it so I can get my targets off. But I decided to mostly, but I also did mostly get more match stuff out. Next up, I went to Destiny or Phoenix Poster. Mostly my opponent has. Next on lane, I got Jet. Here's where the combo wise works out. I have a form removal. They destroy my Jet, but it wouldn't matter. I destroy Destiny and Phoenix, mostly to make a target self out, but it brings out Jet, and I can still redirect the attack. Next up, the Miracle Fusion, but I don't think it would have mattered. Malicious Hero would have not made game. Next up, I draw into Brilliant Fusion. I was like, don't they know essentially Sylvan out? Going entirely here, mostly reflex. My opponent I wish would have allowed me to attack. I still would have had game of all things. Next up, everything else from here on out is just me utilizing my other decks. But also, I will show you my last match in ranking was against Abyss, but it wasn't that good. I decided to add my videos that weren't that good, or essentially just my matches that weren't good, or just went by so fast it got a negation. My hand was pretty much the most ideal thing I could ask for, personally. Flows right into going spinny. Because I'll mostly just so I can combo, so I can send my trap to my goals to my grave. Dog Scrubber, mostly I'll go first Link, so I go in Link 3, go into Link 2 easily. Next up, I go in those two just to go in Splash Mage. Splash Mage to go in so I can spend special on Spinny, but I can also realize it for another Link. Next up, I went to Sunlight Wolf again, but mostly so I got my spell. And next up, pretty much I go into Transcode, Splash Mage into it. As soon as I saw that my opponent was doing, I decided to do that, but I decided to quit. Next up, pretty much everything else from here, I'll be placed. I don't need a marker there since I know where my match is. Next up, my opponent did make a misplay. It wasn't relevant, I feel like, though, but it was ridiculous enough I decided to show it. They're mostly just utilizing some of a planned deck. Personally, they would have had this game pretty much, I feel like, but I could be wrong. It all depends on my top deck. Essentially, my hand was alright though, but not that good. This is essentially for my deck. Essentially, I sent Melody, but since I know that was better to do, I couldn't go into Denies, but it wouldn't have mattered. I decided to keep it for my Nibiru if nothing else. I was keeping track of how many monsters they had. I kept track of it. I should have waited until the normal send, but I forgot. I could have got rid of everything at once. That was my misplay. Actually, yeah, essentially if I just waited for the normal send, I would have had everything else out. That was my misplay that match. Like, I'm keeping track of my misplays here. I'll be honest, it was surprising how effective plants were. So it's most of my showing matter. Essentially, I was also trying to get most of my daily out. Go into prayer plant. My point actually, I read Gekishi, which I did not know what did previously. But I would have kept my rest of my monsters I did. I was more surprised they didn't link into anything. If I didn't get anything else out. So my blue eye special summon jet, special summon out Phoenix. Mostly so I could bail out whatever the card that was. That's supposed to summon out my jet. Personally, I feel like I could have had a game right here, personally. If I just waited for what they did. If I just waited previously, I would have had a game. I didn't realize I had dropped it afterwards, personally. That was surprising me. They decided to drop it here. They, for some reason, also sent it, so that was ridiculous. And that cost them the game, actually. And they realized afterwards. The only thing that would have done was stall a turn, but that's about it. Since the only cards they would have done they would have just summoned out some Link 5, but they would have actually had Zeus, which would have been game for them. Zeus would have been a game, I was pretty sure. Next up, most of the stuff is mostly... Overall, the whole deck theme was obviously plants. It was kind of obvious there were, at least when I saw, that you utilized some engine for Sunavalon. But also some plants that allowed you to send plants to grave. The Gravekeeper powers was a pretty good touch, personally, since it helps mostly agent. Also, some dies mostly get the agent off, which makes sense. But they're at least allow you to turbo out for links. Equilimer was alright. Personally, I think the whole match they would have had it, but personally, the only stuff that took me out of play once I saw this deck was Rika. In Rivalry, but I made sense of Rivalry. But most of my decks mostly dragons anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. For there, I feel like mostly the deck is mostly what I expected it to. Okay, next up, pretty much, here goes my real Slim decks. Oh, wait. I forgot to show a deck, hold on. Pretty much the deck I was facing was just Pendums straight up. Mostly a structure deck, I feel like. Dragon Pit, Dragon Magician. Tuning Magician, which makes no sense, I think. The Foreign Pals. The expected stuff. Mostly just being the standard stuff you mostly see in most Foreign Pal decks, Magician-wise. Personally, I did not know what I was expecting going to this. But I was pretty much alright with it. Because this is also the match I see much. Overall, it's just mostly the standard stuff. The only stuff I didn't expect to see at all, apparently this whole match, was just not seeing Zeus. Overall, I'm not really surprised by most of the stuff I've seen. When I first saw this deck, I was thinking, it's just a straight up copy and paste deck for Magicians. Next up, when I saw this on my hand, I was like, Mexi, please be something useful. As soon as I saw that, I decided to chain. Either that, Babe Call the Grave, or just get Plea +1. I should have waited, personally. But I was like, it didn't matter. Personally, I was like, dude, it mostly gave me everything I need in my hand. Next up, here goes the one monster that would cost me the game. Mostly did Dog Scrapper, mostly so express summon up. I was just surprised they didn't negate the first summon. They just went back straight into my loop. Personally, the attack wasn't the getting I was going for the game. I was just going straight for attack. Adding rage essentially sealed me the game. That's what it felt like. Since I can't realize monster effects at this point in the game. Next I went Trash Code. Reslash slash mostly flex. But mostly so I can co-link. The monster just sealed the whole game. And it was also pretty much, if I remember right, I was just getting everything. The whole Maxis is what sealed the game, and for me, I was surprised not even see one copy of Ash in here or Recalled by Grave. Otherwise, it's a straight up copy and paste Pendulum deck from before that card's released. Next up, here comes the one agent I was still surprised to see. Infinitrack's Machina. I was not surprised to see Maxi or Ash, but I used to see deck space when I first saw the matchup. I was like, what the heck is going on? Then I was like, what could it be? Oh, wait a minute. It might just be a Banish deck. The only stuff I was not surprised to see is it had a lot of agents to work with. Being Pegasus, Infinitracks, Machina. A lot of Infinitracks, but also a lot of Machina packages stuff. The only stuff I don't like, I wasn't expecting was Citadel. The whole match that cost me, the whole match was reinforced since I had no out. The grass looks no greener. Most of the stuff I expect. They probably cracked what they actually needed, generic wise, and gone from there. It's just a straight up standard deck, I felt like. For mostly Infinitracks with a Machina package. It was just a straight up combo deck. Okay, this whole match. Nibiru was the one thing that cut this match at bay, I felt like. Sign it into wool mostly so I can mostly utilize the effect later. Go into like 1, go into Felix, add into my hand, send this. Special, add Sanctuary, send one monster, being this. Mostly so I can bounce to my hand. Go into Belix again, mostly so I have additional copy. Go into Link 2. Re-add Falco back to my hand. Go into Transco so I can go ahead and deal with stuff. Go into Silent Wolf. End my turn there, since I can't do anything else. Silent Wolf was the one thing that helped. I felt like as soon as I saw that, I was like, Infinitracks, I was keeping track, but I saw Machina. But next up, I saw them add. As soon as I saw them add Machina being forced to my hand, I was like, oh crud! I wish I actually had everything else I need. Since I could have targeted everything else I need. Essentially, this is the whole reason why I think I need enough. Afterwards, this whole match, I essentially started playing it out to see what I can do. Sunlight Wolf would have mattered. I was like, either way, essentially, either I go Access Code Docker would have been out for this match either way, but it wouldn't have worked since I would have been killed by a token. I realized afterwards. This is the reason why I said I'm starting to look into it. Kaiju's mostly my other decks. And except that one deck that made me decide to go into it permanently was against Time Lords. Most of the staple stuff being with also their own Kaijus. Personally, without having my Blue Eyes of all things in my deck, I felt like I need to get an out card. They're also running some floodgates. Solemn Strike, also Summon Limit. Most of the stuff was the stuff they can utilize to go into level 10, stuff they also can go into, negates. But the rest is just some generic stuff they either have or just stuff in general they mostly had. Or Skull Dread mostly, so that makes sense. The only thing I was processing my whole head this whole game was like, I actually need that out. Next up, I decided to go into Imperm, which was a right card, which I at least draw into first. I already had in my opening hand, which was great. Foxy mostly surveil stuff, but Ash negated it. But I still have combos to mostly work with. Add a circle in my hand. Re-add circle. Go into Belix again. Add additional power mostly so I can special summon out. Go into Splash. Splash into Link 3. Go into Transcode. Transcode into Splash. Go into Link 4 here. Personally, what I should not have done was go into that Link. I think pretty much it would have cost me in the match, but it would have given me the out if I actually need to. Without the gem, I realized that after this whole match, I feel like, at least I think, if I actually had enough necessary cards. Essentially, that was going to deal in life points, so I decided might as well gain the attack of it. Everything else was sent back to my deck, including the spells. But also, I realized that everything else wouldn't have mattered. They decided to remain another Ash. I essentially got my circle back. Personally, what I should have done there was essentially get my Ash back. Personally, I think pretty much actually what I should have done this whole match was that I should have gone into my Jack first. And I essentially would have had my out. Pretty much I realized that this whole match. If I had just gone into Jack, I would have gone into this. I would have had games. I would have had an out, apparently, and I only realized it after this whole match. Because I keep forgetting what Update Jammer did this match. It was another out, but I decided to... But it allows me to negate all the cards. In the damage step, so it would have been my out, I think. I can double check if I need to. Sorry about that. I was just really looking at rulings where I was right about Update Jammer, and I did pause the time, thinking my still programs on my screen. Nothing much changed there. I'm also looking into that ruling if I need to. That battles and with up to Jammer with us against the Time Lords. But overall, I decided to quit this match afterwards pretty soon, and I realized it wouldn't have mattered. Also, I'm playing against Gravekeeper next, which was surprising me. But mostly because it's a little R shape, but I didn't know a thing about what it was originally until afterwards, which is surprising to me. It's mostly a lot more standard stuff. They're essentially just trying to get me in out. The only thing I don't understand is how the heck would they essentially don't add a few essentially spiritualists, but I'm surprised they add more cards like more power stations to get utilize this Gravekeeper supernatural effect more. Kashi, everything else is here. What I figure is like they're just having some form of removal essentially. Which I know I saw a lot of. But nothing surprising. Honestly, I might look into LJM later and see if I actually was right. If that was actually the call I actually needed. If so, I'm going to be depressed. Because I had that out for everything I needed. This is where I decided I kind of use my hand. The imperm is the one thing that shocked me. So it's just showing on Bladelix personally. Going back into it, mostly so I will loop. But mostly so I can actually get most of my combo cards working. But also it's less niche, I felt like. So I get more use of my stuff. I get Zell back to my hand for its effect. Go back to the Sunlight Wolf. I only realized afterwards I could have gone Link 3, but that was my bad. Like, I forgot about what Sentry actually does. To be fair, I don't use it often or see it that much outside the Link event. So I kind of forgot about it. Get back circle. Alright, bad distance. Go Delta Jammer. They forgot what my sword does. They essentially utilize it too early. But I didn't special summon out yet, so that wouldn't have mattered. They also realized afterwards I would make game, regardless, since I had my out. They also utilize Salamangreat early. If I actually ever get a ruling, if I actually, like as soon as I get done looking at the ruling for it, I might actually work out most of my stuff. And actually, I would pretty much look at the replay for that match. I'm probably going to not play for a while, since I'm actually, or record videos next week or so. As of Wednesday, I'll be leaving. If I have any good matches, I'll post it. But mostly, I'll be revising most of my footage previously, and actually submit it. I'm looking at submitting it by Monday at least. Since I'm going to be busy tomorrow, and I might get it done today. Some old footage that I got corrected before I had a chance to post it, and I forgot where I set it. So that's an option. I hope you guys have a good night or day wherever you are when time watching.